On this week's NESN Patriots podcast, we will discuss the Patriots' impressive win over the Minnesota Vikings, and we will preview their upcoming matchup against the Miami Dolphins. Welcome to the NESN Patriots podcast. I am Doug Kai, joined as always by Zach Cox. Zach, how are you doing?
Doing great, Doug. How are you?
I am doing well. I thought that it was a fairly decisive win that the Patriots had over the Vikings. They won 24-10. Probably not the best offensive performance by the Patriots, but all in all, Vikings are a good team. Patriots defense really stepped up in this matchup, and I think that the Patriots proved that, last week's win over the Jets, coming off the bye week, coming off the big loss to the Titans, that game wasn't a fluke, that the Patriots are right back on track after the bye week.
Yeah, I've kind of seen some people kind of discounting both of these last two wins that the Patriots have had as just like, the Patriots can go out and really not play that well at all. Like, we didn't really learn anything about the team from this game. I think these are two pretty solid wins. I mean, like you said, down in New York where they always tend to struggle, they put forth like a pretty complete effort, at least in the second half. Mm-hmm. And then against the Vikings, who are one of the better defensive teams in the NFL, have one of the better receiving duos in the NFL, they shut down that receiving duo, and their offense did enough to win. I mean, they had a good game on the ground. Tom Brady spread the ball around. There were still a couple of, I guess you could say, nitpicks to take away. Like Rob Gronkowski wasn't particularly involved. A couple other things like that. But overall, I think these are two pretty solid wins for the Patriots, and I think they're in a very good spot right now with, 4 games to go?
Yeah, I think I kind of said this on last week's podcast as well, that Patriots fans probably weren't going to be happy with this team coming off the bye, not fully happy until they do show that they can beat the Dolphins in Miami and the Steelers in Pittsburgh. And, these were two games against the Jets and against the Vikings the Patriots were expected to win. I mean, the Vikings are a good team. And like you said, the Patriots did a really good job against Vikings wide receivers Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. Stephon Gilmore mostly took on Diggs. Diggs was a little bit banged up, but I thought that Gilmore did a really good job limiting Diggs. I thought that Jason McCourty did a fantastic job against Adam Thielen, lining up outside in their base defense, moving into the slot when the Vikings played with 3 receivers. And I think that, Jason McCourty he lets up a couple big plays here and there this season. He's kind of done that all year. But that's kind of the life of an NFL cornerback. And for the most part, Jason McCourty has been extremely solid. He did let up the touchdown to Thielen, but beyond that, he really kind of locked down one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. And Patriots rookie cornerback J.C. Jackson might have been the breakout star of the game. He was facing off against the Vikings' number 3 receivers, Aldrick Robinson and Laquan Treadwell. There might have been some instances where he could have been flagged on a couple coverage plays, but for the most part, he did a really good job, and he forced an interception by Duron Harmon with a really well-placed pass breakup.
Yeah, I still think Jackson might need to dial down his kind of physicality a tiny bit, because like you said, I do think he could have been called for pass interference on a couple of those plays. But yeah, he was the breakout star of this game, and I think going forward, it's going to be very interesting to see how the Patriots handle their cornerback kind of rotation now, because basically for the entire year, at least since Eric Rowe landed on injured reserve, it's been Stephon Gilmore and Jason McCourty as those two starters, with Jonathan Jones there in the slot and Jackson kind of cycling in a little bit here and there. With how well Jackson played this past game, and with how competent Jason McCourty has looked in the slot, where he hasn't really played much during his NFL career until this season, this might be kind of the setup that they might stick with moving forwards. I know that they do. I would assume that they want to get Duke Dawson at least a little bit involved before the end of the regular season comes, just to see kind of what they have in their second round draft pick. Maybe you don't see that until week 16, 17 in some kind of more what should be two less competitive games against the Bills and the Jets. And Jonathan Jones, even though he has struggled at times this season, it's not like he's been awful out there. So the Patriots are in a pretty good place with this cornerback rotation right now. But the one that we saw the other night, Sunday night, might be what they want to go with moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's the group that gives them the highest upside, just because of J.C. Jackson's ball skills.
Jackson is really, really good.
He is really good, and I mean his teammates praise the hell out of the guy. They said that he has elite ball skills. His ability to track the fade route, they said, is elite. When he turns his head and watches the ball, that's when he's at his most impressive. So I think that having Jonathan Jones in there is a really good insurance option, just because you know what you're getting in Jonathan Jones. Like you said, he was fine throughout the first, I'd say, 12 weeks of the season. He did his job. He ranked as one of the worst slot cornerbacks in the NFL just based on his coverage stats, but I don't think that tells the entire story. He wasn't egregiously bad or anything, but that was a spot where the Patriots could have improved after 12 weeks of the season. And I think by moving Jason McCourty into that slot role and by having J.C. Jackson outside, that has improved that position, or at least it did in Week 13 against the Vikings. I think this week, as long as Danny Amendola can play, it's going to be a good gauge of what the Patriots are going to do moving forward, because Danny Amendola is a much more traditional slot wide receiver than Adam Thielen was with the Vikings. Adam Thielen is 6'3". He's more of a big-bodied receiver, whereas Danny Amendola is obviously a lot smaller. So we'll see if the Patriots do trust a guy like Jason McCourty, who, as you said, mostly played on the outside throughout the first 9 years of his career. If they do trust Jason McCourty to play inside against those smaller, shiftier slot receivers like the Danny Amendola type. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. If I were the Patriots, I would probably keep rolling with Jason McCourty, Stephon Gilmore, and J.C. Jackson. Also, like you said, Duke Dawson, I'd probably give him a shot at some point. This might be a good week to maybe give him 5 or 10 snaps, see what he can do against a guy like Danny Amendola. But it also might not be the worst idea to just kind of redshirt the guy this season and keep rolling with J.C. Jackson if he's going to continue to play as well as he has this season so far, because I think he's letting up like a 38 passer rating on the season. He's got the 2 interceptions. He forced another one, like I said, on Sunday, and he's just not allowing a lot of catches out there.
Yeah, the passer rating, it is, I think it's 38.5. It's the lowest of any NFL cornerback who's played, I can't remember exactly what the number of snaps. It's something like 100, 110 coverage snaps this season. That's the lowest out of anybody. So obviously it's still a bit of a small sample size, but yeah, he's definitely has a ton of upside there in the Patriots secondary.
On offense, like you said, Rob Gronkowski, I've been kind of pounding the table all season that, oh no, it's the injuries, it's the extra attention, it's all these other things that have contributed to his lack of production and success this season. And I think, it's tough to say, but after last week's game, he just doesn't look like the same player. And he was actually, as Bill Belichick mentioned today, he was actually off the injury report last week. So those ankle and back injuries supposedly were at 100% by Friday afternoon. He went into that game on Sunday, and how many catches did he have in the game?
3 catches on 4 targets for 23 yards, I believe.
Yeah, so
26 yards.
Not a whole lot there. He wasn't able to power through a defender for a first down at one point. He really struggled as a blocker. So I don't know what happened to Gronk this season. I don't know if these injuries, he's 100%, but the injuries are still limiting him to a different degree, or what's really going on here. But I'm kind of losing faith that Gronk will regain his Gronkness by the end of the season this year.
Yeah, it's really been in the last 2 games ever since he's returned from those the ankle and back injuries that kept him out for basically a month. He had the touchdown against the Jets, but overall against the Jets, he really didn't. He wasn't particularly impressive. Jamal Adams was able to kind of shut him down for most of that game. And then this Vikings game, I think, might have been his worst game of the season. The struggles in blocking were something that you never see from Rob Gronkowski. He was just getting overpowered by defensive ends and linebackers, and just the kind of his whole body language on these kind of plays. It was strange. It looks like he's hurt, but like Bill Belichick said, he's not. I'm sure he's still banged up. I'm sure he's not 100% peak health right now because it's 13 weeks into an NFL season, but he was, like Belichick said, he was off the injury report. He'll probably be back on the injury report this week after he took that shot from Harrison Smith on one of his 3 catches in that game. But that was pretty late in the game, and even up before that, he really did not look like himself. So I don't know. We just talked to Adam Gase, the Dolphins head coach, on a conference call, and he's basically saying, yeah, when you expect Rob Gronkowski to be anything but Rob Gronkowski, that's when he comes out and kills you for 9 catches for 120 yards and 3 touchdowns. So you could easily see Rob Gronkowski becoming vintage Gronk at some point before the end of the season, but we haven't seen it since week 1, and that was, 3 months ago? It's really just becoming, like you said, he just doesn't look like himself.
And to some degree, I think a head coach of an opposing team is going to say.
Well, he's always going to say that, but it's still. He has a long enough kind of track record that that you've got to kind of have to go into every game expecting Gronk to be Gronk.
Yeah.
And then when he's not, it's more of kind of a disappointment than an expectation. But right at this point, it is becoming sort of at this point, it would be almost a little bit of oh wow, Gronk. It would be kind of surprising if Gronk comes out and has a kind of 8-catch, 140-yard, 2-touchdown game this weekend.
It would also be at this point. It wouldn't be like, oh, hey, I told you so. Gronk. It would be like, all right, well, let's see if he can do it a second week in a row.
See if this is sustainable, yeah.
Yeah, and even if he had done that this past week against the Vikings, I think that myself and probably a lot of other people would have been like, okay, see, now that he's finally healthy, he can be himself again. He's going to be
for
Gronk.
An extra couple weeks. Yeah. He'll be,
But, I mean, quite honestly, if he did that against the Vikings this week on Sunday, I probably would have to see it another week before I told myself that was what we're going to see from Gronk moving forward, just because of how he has played 13 weeks into the season. I thought the Patriots' rushing performance was
weird,
interesting in this game, a little bit weird. They wound up averaging 4.1 yards per carry on 39 rushes. They ran the ball a ton of times. But, I mean, live watching the game, I was surprised when I looked at those numbers. And then even after I rewatched the game, I was like, I wasn't that impressed by the running game overall. I thought that Sony Michel wasn't finding a ton of room to run. His longest carry was 8 yards. Yeah. So, I mean, he was at least kind of consistent with his carries. Rex Burkhead wasn't able to get much going on the ground game. He had a long run of 10 yards. Otherwise, he had 6 carries for 10 yards. Julian Edelman picked up a big chunk, 35 yards on 2 carries. So, I don't know. I think the Vikings defense obviously is pretty decent. So, we'll see how the Patriots' run game can do moving forward against defenses that aren't quite as good. But it wasn't the same performance that we saw in Week 12 against the Jets as far as the ground game went, as far as I was concerned.
Yeah. The Vikings have ranked pretty well against the run all season. And like you said, it wasn't I think that performance they had against the Jets was easily their best of the season on the ground. Would they finish with something like 215 yards?
Yeah.
And in this one, I was kind of in the same boat. I was surprised when I looked at the box score and saw that they had 160 rushing yards. I know that they were running the ball a lot more later in the game when they had that 2-touchdown lead and were kind of trying to milk the clock down a little bit. But yeah, I guess this might be, you could look at this as a benefit of having someone like Rex Burkhead back, where you can have a kind of game like this where no ball carrier has a particularly impressive stat line, and then you just hand the ball off to 5 different guys, and you end up finishing with 160 rushing yards.
Right, and I think that James Develin picking up the 2 touchdowns was certainly unexpected, and that's kind of a funny story because, I mean, James Develin was a defensive end at Brown. He came into the league as like a defensive end / outside linebacker. He actually had to go to like I forgot what, UFL?
UFL, yeah.
To actually convert to fullback, where he played under Jay Gruden. That was, I think, his first year as a head coach at the UFL level. Then I don't know. I mean, his journey to becoming a goal line back was certainly a strange one. And he even said after the game that he didn't play a whole lot of offense even in high school.
Yeah, it was the first time he'd ever scored 2 touchdowns in a game in his life, he said.
So that's kind of unbelievable. But, I mean, to some degree, he really did solve the Patriots' short yardage issues that they've had in recent weeks by scoring those 2 touchdowns. I think that moving forward, we'll probably see Rex Burkhead more in a short yardage role if Sony Michel can't continue to, or his struggles in the short yardage continue. But in the meantime, James Develin did a pretty good job of diving forward on those plays.
Yeah, I actually didn't realize how badly Michel had struggled in short yardage situations this year, because or at least in goal line situations. I mean, he's carried the ball Sony Michel has carried the ball 8 times from the 1 yard line this season. Only got into the end zone on 2 of those. And when you look down the list, I mean, the other backs haven't had much better success. Cordell Patterson 0 for 2, James White 2 for 4, James Develin 2 for 2.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to see James Develin because he have this type of game, because he's never been a ball carrier in his entire career. He had I think he had 8 carries in his entire career up until Sunday night, and then he had 4 carries in Sunday night's game, including 2 touchdowns. So it's probably not something you're going to see a ton of moving forward, but maybe if they do get into some of those goal line situations and the other backs aren't really cutting it, maybe you do see him hand it off a couple more times to James Develin.
Yeah, I mean, it would certainly be interesting. Let's get into this week's game against the Dolphins, which, I don't know, I mean, basically just anytime the Patriots play the Dolphins in Miami, it's a pretty intriguing game just because the Patriots struggle in Miami so much. They've lost 4 of their last games. against the Dolphins.
4 of the last 5, yeah.
Yeah, what did I say?
You said 4 of the last games.
Oh, 4 of the last 5 games.
Same thing.
Against the Dolphins in Miami. And I don't know exactly why that is. I mean, one of those games was the Steven Jackson game where the Patriots really didn't show a whole lot of interest in winning that game.
Worst game of all time.
Yeah, that was back in 2015. But, I mean, this week it looks like maybe a little bit easier. The Patriots played the Dolphins extremely tough. What was that, week
4. Week 4, Miami was 3-0 at the time, and that was the Patriots won 38-7.
It was their best defensive performance of the season.
Best defensive performance of the season. Their most decisive win of the season. The 38 or 31 point margin of victory is still by far the most that they've had in any game this season. Yeah, that was really the kind of the wake-up call for any Dolphins fans that were kind of seeing, this team's 3-0, Patriots are 1-2, you never know. And then they've kind of crashed back to earth since then. I think they're 3-6, the Dolphins are, since that game. Still in the playoff hunt, surprisingly. Right. They beat the Bills in this really bizarre game on Sunday. They were outgained something like 450 to 170. And gave up 130 rushing yards to Josh Allen. Still ended up winning that game. So they're 6-6. They're only one game behind the Baltimore Ravens for the final wild card playoff spot. They kind of have to win out or come close to winning out to have a chance of getting in. But yeah, this doesn't seem on paper. This should be a relatively easy Patriots win. But we have said that about a couple other times they've gone down to Miami, and it hasn't really been the case.
Yeah, and Danny Amendola was limited in practice today. Xavier Howard has a knee injury. And, yeah, I mean, it's actually kind of unbelievable that the Dolphins are 6-6 this year. Because
Albert Wilson, Jakeem Grant, both on IR now. Right. A lot of players on IR for this team.
But, yeah, I mean, it really is kind of, like I said, it's amazing that they're even in the hunt since they had to start Brock Osweiler for 5 games this season. Feels like every time they look at a box score, they've lost the game, but that clearly has not been the case. Bill Belichick, as usual, is talking up the Dolphins like they're, the 1972 Dolphins.
Loves
their special teams. And
not their punter, though.
No, did not seem to love their punter. But he seems to be a huge fan of Kenyon Drake. I mean, he barely even has to, I don't know. He mentions Kenyon Drake like he's talking about like Todd Gurley or something. He's like, and then they've got Drake. I guess. But I don't know. It's so hard to predict how the Patriots are going to do in this game. I was just talking to guys back here in the media workroom. I've got a friend who's in a survivor pool, and he was like, should I take the Patriots this week? Because it's like some big money survivor pool. I was like, I don't know. I mean, logically, yes, but like I said, they've lost 4 of their last 5 in Miami. And usually I don't like going by those stats, and usually I don't think that, as Adam Gase just said to us on a conference call, 1 year really doesn't have anything to do with the next. 1 game sometimes doesn't have to do with the next if you're talking about injuries and everything. And, the Dolphins team that won 5 years ago probably has very, very little in common with the Dolphins team that's going to play the Patriots this year. But there just seems to be something about playing in that Miami heat that affects the Patriots. And it won't be as bad in December as it might be in September, but it still has an effect, it seems.
Yeah, bizarrely too, the only of those 5 games, the last 5 times the Patriots went down there, the only game they won was against the only Dolphins team that finished with a winning record and went to the playoffs.
That's funny.
They beat the Dolphins in, I think it was week 17, back in 2016, when the Dolphins finished 10-6, got a wild card spot, lost to the Steelers in the first round. Every other year they've been 8-8, 7-9, 6-10. So there's no real rhyme or reason to this. It's really gone on as long as Tom Brady's been in the league. He's 7-9 in games in Miami. He basically has a winning record everywhere else. So it's just it's a weird little kind of quirk, a statistical quirk that can't really be explained. But it's something that it sounds dumb, but you kind of have to take it into account. Yeah,
you certainly do. But if Xavier Howard can't play this week, he's got the banged up knee. If Danny Amendola, I think that Danny Amendola, it basically sounds like Adam Gase said that he has not been compliant in practice. Sounds like he's kind of been stubbornly trying to do more in practice than what Adam Gase wants him to do.
He really wants to play in this game, as you would expect.
So I certainly think that Danny Amendola will play in this game.
Amendola also their leading receiver right now.
That's kind of unbelievable.
Or not Minnesota's, Miami's. I think he only has something like 480 passing yard or receiving yards.
Yeah, he's got 469. Albert Wilson is next up, but he's on injured reserve. Kenny Stills and Devontae Parker haven't really been getting going
Parker's
that well
missed a lot of time this season.
Yeah, they're both averaging about 30 or 39 yards per game. on that end. So, I mean, some of that has to do with the fact that they had to start Brock Osweiler for 5 games.
Very true. That's going to hurt your stats a little bit.
Ryan Tannehill was injured. But, it's just a kind of a odd, not that intriguing Dolphins team, to be quite honest. They still have Cameron Wake. Seems like he's probably going to play forever at this point. How old is he now? He's like 36.
He's been playing since 2009 was his rookie year, so he's been around for quite a while.
I exaggerated a little bit. Well, was he in the CFL for a while too?
I do not know. Let me see.
I think he might have been. He is 36.
Huh.
Actually, he went undrafted in 2005, played 2 seasons with the BC Lions in 2007 and 2008. And he's been on the Dolphins ever since 2009. So, I mean, that's a very long time to be on one team. That's a very long time to be in the NFL. He's one of the oldest defensive ends in the NFL, but I mean, he's still definitely getting it done. He was a second-team All-Pro back in 2016. He was a Pro Bowler back in 2016. Yeah. So, I mean, the way that Bill Belichick was talking about him, he's still the same guy that the Patriots have seen for years now here.
I mean, he's always had success against the Patriots. I mean, you just look at his game logs. He played 18 games against the Patriots, 10.5 sacks, 9 tackles for loss, 35 QB hits. So that's a pretty solid resume. I know Tom Brady is not a fan of seeing him on the other side of the field.
You did your weekly scouting the opponent piece that posted this morning. Check that out on NESN.com. What were, I guess, some of the bigger differences that you've noticed from the Dolphins since the last time these two teams played?
We've touched on a couple of them. Yeah. The fact that Xavier Howard might not be playing in this game. I actually talked about the fact that Xavier Howard is generating a lot of kind of Pro Bowl buzz. A lot of people are saying that he's one of the better cornerbacks in the NFL right now. Didn't look like it back in week 4 because he really, really struggled against the Patriots in that game. And that was a Patriots team that didn't have Julian Edelman yet and was kind of just integrating Josh Gordon into the mix. He gave up, I think, 3 catches for 73 yards and 2 touchdowns. Tom Brady had a perfect passer rating when targeting him. Let me pull up this list really quick just to see if I missed anything. Just the fact that they really have been on quite the downward spiral ever since that first game, but the fact that they are still in playoff contention somehow. And then Danny Amendola might not be playing in this game. Their receiving core is probably going to look significantly different because Devontae Parker didn't play in that first Patriots game. Obviously, Jakeem Grant and Albert Wilson did. They're both on IR now. So some moving pieces in the offense, but their running backs are basically the same. They still have Frank Gore, still have Kenyon Drake, and over on the defense, you're still going to see a lot of the same faces, except for Rashad Jones, their Pro Bowl safety, is expected to play in this game. He missed that Week 4 game. And Minkah Fitzpatrick, their rookie kind of hybrid defensive back.
From Alabama.
He was playing mostly safety back then. Now he's basically been strictly a boundary cornerback for the last couple of weeks. So they move him all around the field, but I think you're probably going to see him more at cornerback this week, especially if Xavier Howard can't go.
Patriots could clinch the AFC East with a win or a tie.
10th straight. It's crazy.
That is wild over the Dolphins this week. And I would say the Patriots' playoff picture in general has just got a little clearer, a little brighter over the last few days here. The Steelers lost to the Chargers in pretty embarrassing fashion. It seems like the Steelers were basically I wouldn't say they're like in shambles right now or anything, but they're definitely trending in the wrong direction. Yeah. And
2 straight losses, and now they might not have James Conner for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, he's got an injured
breakout
knee.
Running back. I believe it's a knee. Yeah, it was initially reported as a contusion.
Or is it an ankle?
It's some sort of lower leg. I think it might should be an ankle, but it was initially reported as just a bruise. Now they're saying it might be more significant. He's not expected to play this weekend, so you might not see him next weekend when the Patriots go to Pittsburgh. So that definitely breaks in the Patriots' favor.
And the Steelers' running back would be Jalen Samuels, who's a rookie out of NC State.
He's the guy we loved before the draft, right?
We did. He was basically like a tight end hybrid in college. He was more of a pass catcher than a running back. He was their goal line back, a slot receiver, and a tight end at NC State. So
he's like 6'4", isn't he? Isn't he a big guy?
No, he's actually on the smaller side. He's like 5'11", which was kind of strange that he was listed as a tight end at NC State. But yeah, I thought that he might be the kind of chess piece that the Patriots would want to draft at running back. They instead took Sonny Michel in the first round, and that's worked out pretty well for them so far. But no, I mean, the Steelers, like I said, lost to the Chargers. They might not have James Conner. The Chiefs obviously just lost Kareem Hunt. They released him after the assault video came out from, when was that, in February? So, I mean, the Chiefs won last week, but now they're going to be rolling with Spencer Ware moving forward, and you just kind of wonder what that team's mindset is going to be like in general. They still have to play the Chargers, and they have to play the Seahawks, who are kind of surging right now. They have to play them at home
in Seattle,
before the end of the season. So that schedule for the Chiefs is not looking quite as easy as it did a few weeks ago when they had Kareem Hunt there at running back, when they had, when the Seahawks weren't playing as well and everything was kind of rolling their way a little bit more. So certainly it will be interesting over the last 4 weeks here, but the Patriots really would benefit from winning out. If they can beat the Dolphins here, if they can beat the Steelers in Pittsburgh, their last 2 games against the Bills and the Jets are definitely on the easier side, but these next 2 weeks will really depend on where the Patriots are seated in the playoffs.
Yeah, it would really benefit the Patriots to win out, as you said, especially because kind of against all odds, the Houston Texans are right there with them. They've won 9 games in a row. They have an identical record to the Patriots right now. The Patriots do have the tiebreaker because they won back in week 1. But the Texans have basically a cake schedule the rest of the way. I think they play the Eagles, the Jaguars, the Colts, and the Jets or something like that.
Wow.
So it's all teams that are most likely going to finish outside of the playoff picture. And really, if the Patriots lose, say the Patriots lose this week, Texans win this week, Texans vault up into that number two spot, which obviously gives them home field. So I'm not ready to call the Texans legitimate kind of like Super Bowl contenders yet, but they're playing very well. The LA Chargers are playing very well, so even though their playoff seeding might not affect the Patriots because they do have the Chiefs in their same division, so they would have to jump over them and all that kind of stuff. But there are definitely some teams that are kind of seem to be trending a little downward, the ones we just mentioned, and then the teams like the Texans and the Chargers that are kind of continuing to surge there.
But those wins over the Texans and the Chiefs at this point in the season are looking really big for the Patriots, just because that does give them the tiebreaker if they did finish with identical records by the end of the season.
Absolutely.
Obviously, the Chiefs would still have to lose 1 game, and if all 3 of those teams finish with the same record, the Patriots would be the number 1 seed in the AFC, which would be really big as far as playoffs go, just because obviously the Patriots would like to play at home more than they would like to play in Kansas City or Houston or really anywhere else. So definitely going to be an interesting final 4 weeks of the season here. And just to start things off, win over the Dolphins in Miami. It would be only like I said, the second time in 6 years that they have done that. Would be a very good jumping off point for the Patriots.
Absolutely.
Let's play America's favorite game once or twice here, where I name a player that I've never heard of on the opposing team, and we guess where he went to college. And I'm going to start off with Cornell Armstrong. He's a rookie cornerback.
Cornell Armstrong went to Southern Miss.
I'm going to say Purdue. Southern Miss is a good guess. Cornell Armstrong went to Southern Miss.
Oh, let's go.
Man.
I promise I didn't look that up. I don't actually know who Cornell Armstrong is.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. I think we got to go out on that one. That was impressive. That was unbelievable.
Oh.
Southern Miss is the good guess from now on. That's
I'm going to be riding high for the rest of the day now.
6th round pick, 209th overall, cornerback out of Southern Miss, Cornell Armstrong. Well, congratulations, Zach.
Thank you.
You won America's favorite game this week, and you might be the only winner in the history of this game because it's very difficult to guess where guys that we've never heard of went to college. But keep it on NESN.com for all of your Patriots coverage. Follow me on Twitter at Doug Kide. Follow Zach on Twitter at ZachHawksNESN. And we will be back at it next week when the Patriots take on the Steelers.